All right, DB family, I'm Coach Andrew, and today we're gonna go over some troubleshooting in this intro series. Maybe you've been experiencing some different feelings on the machine that are less than ideal. Potentially something going on with your knees when you're squatting, your lower back, right? Maybe your hips, or you're just not quite getting the intensity or that activation in your glutes that you're really desiring. What we're gonna go over today is just ways that we can kind of troubleshoot that in terms of technique, some different drills you can do, and experiences that you can follow on the machine that'll lead to better workouts, more effectivity, and just overall better results. So first things first, I'm gonna step on to the machine. All right, so one of the biggest problems that we experience, and this will be the first one we tackle, is gonna be if you're experiencing pain in your knees as you're going down and achieving depth in your squat. There's a couple ways we can deal with this, and one of the ways we're gonna start dealing with is just your setup on the machine. First and foremost, to protect those knees, what we're gonna do is drive your heels down, push your knees out aggressively left to right, but we don't wanna twist our toes out. So just watch me right now. But what we're gonna talk about is the angle that your knee should be in when you are squatting. So when I achieve the bottom of my squat, what I'm looking to do, if I were to draw a line up from my ankle bone, my knee is gonna be behind that. So when I go down, I wanna avoid this. This is a no-go. Knees are tracking forward. It's gonna put pressure on the front of my knee, that patella tendon. So as I come up, what we wanna do is tuck that tailbone, really squeeze into the seat so we're not gonna slide up or back. And as I push back, my knees finish just behind that ankle bone. Stand up. Now the pressure's off the front of the knee, and now I'm thinking about more glute activation. Speaking of glute activation, one of the other knee issues that we may have is called a valgus. So if you experience your knees caving in or driving in towards one another, what we're gonna think about is just creating tension, like a corkscrew. So if I push my heels onto these ramps, without twisting my toes outward, I'm gonna drive my knees out. So I'm thinking about almost trying to split the machine with that outward pressure of my heels. And then I apply that with the angle that my needs to be in relation to the ankle. I got a good squat. So let's go ahead and try that. So I sit down, I'm driving the knees out, pushing up. I got a whole lot more glute there. Again, let's tuck that tailbone. Now I want you to squeeze your butt intentionally, do the same thing. Now you got the dream butt. So what we wanna make sure that we're doing every time, screwing the heels in, driving the knees out without twisting the toes out, and making sure that that relationship between your knee and your ankle is tracking a little bit more on that angle back. So that's our first issue. Another problem, now that we've addressed the knees, all right, and we've got those set up nicely, is quad. So if your squat becomes quad dominant, those big muscles, the four of them, right, that surround our femurs and our legs here, we're tending to use these more than we're using our glutes, all right, our backside. It's not what we're looking to achieve using the machine. So now that we have everything in place to protect the knees, let's add on top of that. What I wanna do is think about what's actually happening as I go down. As I go down, I'm pulling myself from right here, this hip crease, my hip flexor, into the bottom of the squat, right? So my legs are somewhat relaxed here, then they're going to be in tension as I pull myself down. Keeping everything in mind, driving the heels in, pushing my knees outward without pushing the toes too far out, and tucking the tailbone underneath, squeezing my glutes, creating that upright posture. The whole reason we want to squat utilizing the machine is we want to really focus on glutes, right? Posterior chain, all those muscles behind us. So if this becomes all about our quads, right, we want to try and change that. We want to make it glute focused. So the way we're going to do that, right, is just thinking about creating that glute tension. So right now at the top, tucking my tailbone, squeezing those glutes is a really great way to activate and make it glute focused as opposed to quad focused. In addition to that, what we're gonna do is just change our range of motion. Maybe not go quite as deep, go a little bit slower. Our goal is gonna be to go as low as we can while still having glute intention, right? Our primary tension focus. But if we start to feel the quad take over, that's something to take note of, right? What depth did that happen at? And then we'll try and assess. So screw those heels in, drive the knees out, tuck that tailbone, squeeze the glute. Let's go down slow. All right, so I still have glute. I'm pulling myself down and back using those hip flexors. That knee angle is still there in relation to the ankle. Okay, and I still have glute at the bottom. Now, if I were to lose here, and I come up, let's change our end range for the time being, all right? Let's only go as low as we can, maintaining glute tension. All right, so I have it. I'm really focusing on it. I'm feeling it. That would be something that I would change immediately, and I would look for workouts on the app that are really gonna change the different ranges, keeping in mind everything we've talked about so far with the relationship of the knee and the ankle, driving the knees out, creating that tension, and then keeping glute as our primary mover over top the quad. Right, so far, just to review, we've tackled pain in the knees, and we've tackled, let's say, quad dominant squats. Another common problem, right, and this will be our third one we're gonna address, is just talking about bracing, right, and maybe feeling it in your back. Obviously, we don't wanna put any unwanted pressure on our back. We don't wanna make this squat machine back focused, all right? So one of the ways we can protect our back is by bracing and also thinking about our structure, where we're gonna be. So let's tackle that part first. So when we're setting up, right, building off everything we've done so far, heels driving in, knees pushing out, but the toes staying in line, right? And then as we achieve depth, thinking about that knee tracking backwards, we wanna keep our shoulders stacked over those hips, both at the top, the middle, and the bottom. So throughout the squat, we keep this structural integrity, right? One way we can do that, by pushing back, keeping those arms straight, pulling our armpits down towards the hips, but then also setting the foundation, right? If we keep our glutes squeezed at the bottom, everything else up top will be structured nice, okay? And then another one is gonna be breathing, all right, and bracing. So I don't wanna suck it in like I'm taking an Instagram picture. I wanna think I'm pushing it out. So I wanna push my belly out, all right, like I'm pushing air into a balloon, and then adding that into squeezing the glutes, keeping all that structure, that supports my spine as opposed to puts all the weight and the onus in my spine. So let's look at a good one and a bad version of a squat that would hurt the back. All right, so here's a good one. Upright, tucked in, pushing out. A lot of glute there. Back didn't even feel anything, right? And I stayed braced. Now let's look at a bad one. All right. Okay, nothing about that is really what we want to look for. But if we start to feel like we're caving in, one of the ways we can change that, all right, two things, and you may have seen it, my shoulders slouched forward, I lost that structural integrity, and I didn't brace, I was more sucking it in, all right? So we push out, and we stay stacked up. And then last thing I'm gonna say is just make sure that once we put all these good things into use, we go down nice and slow, and as low as we can. It makes sense for us as an individual to keep that bracing and that glute tension. And then we stand all the way up. All right, so now that we've addressed knees, quads, back, lastly, overall, nothing is really working for you. You're not feeling it at all. You're not getting the experience you want to get out of the machine. So what we're gonna do to feel that, right, we're gonna talk about tension and set an intention, all right, before we start squatting. One way we're gonna do that, right, is just by creating good habits at the top and bottom of our squat. So a lot of times at the top of our squat, right, we feel like this is an opportunity to relax. It should be an opportunity to create even more tension than we do at the bottom or in the middle. So what we're gonna do first, keep in mind everything we've already done, keep that posture upright. I want you to just softly bend those knees just a little bit and squeeze your glutes against that seat. Hold this before we do anything else. So we're gonna learn how to utilize glutes through a hold as opposed to a squat. So, big breath, brace out, squeezing, clenching. Now, as we're feeling that, right, I'm not even worried about squatting. I'm thinking about feeling glute tension, and I start to get more comfortable with this and more aware of what this feels like. I'm gonna challenge my depth and keep going slow and keep trying to find depth. Keep pushing down, keeping that relationship with the knee and the ankle, finding it, keeping that squeeze. If I lose it, my new range is here. This is where I live, right? If this is where I find it, come up, extra squeeze. Find that range again, right? And if we start here in our first couple workouts, this is where our range is. After maybe a week or so, a little further, and now we still have glute tension here. We start to build upon that. We can utilize this throughout all the workouts, and we get the experience that we want to get, and we get the benefits that we know we want when we first got the machine itself. So those are some common problems during the troubleshooting that I think would really help you guys start to get a little bit better at doing these workouts and start to get a little bit more out of it. Until then, though, I'm Coach Andrew, and I hope this helped. I'll see you guys next time.